Well, hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. Welcome back to a lovely summer's day. Middle of January, end of January, beginning of February. It's 1st of February, 2nd of February, 3rd of February already. Life gets away. Anyone who's been following along this little dividing head project realises it's just a procrastination on some of the other jobs. And I realise that too, but it's something we're going to need, so we better get on and get it finished. This is a little grinding head, or a centre for a tool and cutter grinder. I imagine its origins are lost in time, and the person who made it, or the company that made it, it's cast iron. It's graduated this way and this way. And last video I made an extension here because it was a little bit short. As a consequence, the spindle that come with it, which is this, which is a bit ordinary, is redundant because it's a bit short. It's got an ugly, really ugly chuck mount on it, and it's got this 24, 40, 36 or something tooth gear on it, which is also fairly ugly. It might get used for something, but it's really only an index gear. I 3D printed some parts. This arm, which will have another arm on here for direct indexing, it needs a little bit of modification. This won't look anything like this, I think, when it's done. Also 3D printed a couple of gears off the Stock Gears website. Just downloaded the files and printed them from KHK in Japan. Now these gears are pretty ugly. There's no denying that. For prototyping and how they sort of look, they look great, but they really won't run together. So I ordered, as was my intention, from KHK, or from the Australian agent, a worm gear set. This is steel and it's ground. I think it's ground steel gear. 1.5 module. This is a nice bronze worm wheel that matches. Now these gears are a different league altogether. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. They run together nice. They've got ground bores. Everything's nicely finished. And of course it's exactly the same gear, but we're going to toss them. This gear, I guess, is next, and then this spindle. I've got a piece of 4140 here, which needs to be machined to fit through here, with enough space on the front to mount a chuck, or to mount my little Sherline chucks in, and a 12.5mm bore through the middle for a collet. A thread on the back and a keyway to fit this gear, and a locking nut to give us some sort of semblance of decent end float. So that's sort of the project for today and tomorrow, I hope. Now this is quite long, and to set it up and bore it, ideally to drill it right through and ream it, ideally we really want our steady, but I haven't finished that. So if I run into problems here, we're probably going to run down the road and ask a favour and see if we can sort out that steady before we do anything. And if that happens, this video won't go out this weekend. But all going well, there are ways to get this on centre, and what I'm going to do is bore it all the way through, use those holes in each end and mount it between centres to machine the outside, and that way it should be pretty concentric. So, or concentric enough that I'll be happy with it. First job really is to attack this, is to bore it and put a keyway in it. I think we're going to open this up. This bore is 22mm, 22.253 or whatever it is 7/8 exactly, nearly. And we're just going to make this to fit it. But this bore, we're going to make this to fit this gear too, but this needs to be about 20mm, I think. So it's a matter of chucking this up in the 4-jaw and getting it running nice and true and boring it out to 20mm. That's the first job. So I've set this up pretty good really. It's within about a thou on that little dial indicator. That's within a thou, so we're going to live with that. This is a knockoff of a Noga. It's got some problems. One is that this piece came with it to go on the indicator, and unless you screw this up and squeeze it up really tight so that this is touching up the end, this doesn't tighten down on it. So that's one of the problems. This needs remaking if I was going to persevere with this. Some sort of a fine adjustment on that on here would be really awesome, so you can move this up and down gently. And probably it needs a little bit of work in the balls if I took it apart and Loctited them all together so it didn't come unscrewed, which it tends to. Would make a big difference to it too. But at some point I'm probably going to invest in a new one. We've had a little bit of a change of plan here, in that I'm only going to bore this out to 19mm because the inside diameter of my chuck is only 20. So rather than run a tool up the hard inside of my chuck and mess it up, I'm going to just clean it up to 19mm. Another job, and jobs never ever seem to finish or stop, they just keep coming. It's one of those things. Another job is to make a decent tool holder. For this Solid Rock Machine Shop boring bar. It's a really, really nice thing. However, I haven't got a decent boring bar holder for it, so that will happen at some point. And we're nowhere near on centre there, so we're going to have to do something about that. If you own a lathe, you never run out of ideas or things that you could make to improve it, or improve its functionality. A live sender is another thing I need. Tool setting gauge would be awesome. And the thing is, these are all things that have got to fit this machine. So they're all things I've got to make. I did start a live center video series many years ago, and if you look back you can probably find it. I wouldn't recommend it because I never ever got it finished. But I do have plans or some more of an idea how I'm going to do that now, so expect updates forthwith. This box over here on the walls of VFD, if anyone wants to know, as someone asked the question recently. Now, because we've had some rain and a lot of humidity, these pulleys are all a little bit rusty, so a bit of steel wool to fix them, but I'm probably going to leave them as they are. It's pretty to buy a nice stock gear like this and then get in and modify it to fit your machine, but it was going to cost me another $35 to buy it already modified with the right size hole in it and a keyway. Probably that's money well spent, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now I bore that out to a nice 3/4 of an inch or 19mm I think, and we'll come back and we'll have a bit of a look at what we got. So I've set this up nice in front and back, and it's pretty concentric, and I'm really pleased with it actually. It's within about half a thou or something. that's plenty good enough, because what I'm going to do is drill this through. This is the spindle, and I've drilled it through with a long series 5mm drill, and there's no run out or no wobble on the end, so I'm pretty pleased about that. And I'll continue that through till it's 12.5mm all the way through, and we'll put a taper in the end to match the collet, and then we'll use the holes in each end as centres to turn the outside concentric to the hole. So hopefully everything should run nice and true. That's the theory. We've managed to bore this out to what I think is about 3/4. However, I'm just going to machine this to fit. That's about where we're going to be with that. Nothing else has to fit on here, and if we do have to make another dividing plate to go on it one day, well, we'll just make it to fit the spindle. So that's progress. Let's dig out the 8mm long series drill, run through there, and follow that up with the bigger one, and we'll have a look when we're done. So I've got this bored out. It's 12.49 or something like that on the drill. It's a fairly nice finish all the way through. I haven't got it all the way through. It's about 12mm to within about 3mm then, but my drill was a fraction short, and rather than take this out and set it up again and re-drill it and make an extension for a drill, which I should have done first, I'm going to drill the other end, which has just got the drawbar end. I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to machine and bore the other end out and get it as close as I possibly can, and we're going to live with that. This needs a reamer or something, a lap or something through it. More than just deburring, I think. I've machined this to 20 degrees taper on the end. I've just done that. If we have a look, we can see that is the right taper. I'm going to rough this down a little bit here on the end, 25mm down to about 26, and then I can finish it between centres. Hopefully then I can set it up on this part here and fix the other end. Probably I'm just going to find a reamer and poke through it. Not sure about that yet. And then this part here needs to be machined to 7/8 to fit the machine, and this needs to be down to the outside spindle thread, and we can start to say it's getting close to done. But that's exactly 12.5, and that's just a fraction tight in there. And when I measure it, it's about 12.46, something like that, 12.49. So I could run that out with a reamer, an adjustable reamer, even if I had to a bit later on. But I don't have the right adjustable reamer. The one's missing in my set that would do the job. So next job with this really is to rough out 25mm of it down to the same as the spindle thread, and take him out and turn him round. So we've got this roughed down for the thread, and we've got the bore pretty well finished. Right through, except for about the last 3 or 4mm. This is a fraction under what it needs to be. I think I'm going to run an adjustable reamer through it all the way through and just get nice bore all the way through that we can fit the collets in, or the chuck over the top. Next job really is to set this up between centres this way. And I'm expecting expecting on this end out here to have a little bit of run out because that drill's 150mm deep in there and just ordinary twist drill. So let's set it up between centres with a dog and just see how much run out we actually do have for interest's sake. So we got this set up between centres, just with a drive dog and 2 centres. It's a little bit out of balance, so this needs to be a little bit shorter. I've got a shorter bolt and I might just change that over now I've done a bit of machining. But because I haven't got any more than about 90mm here, in travel, and we need 85 really on here, I'm going to take this down to somewhere between 7/8, which is what this needs to be, and 19mm, which is what the gear needs to be, which goes on here next. So because I've set this up on between centres on this hole that I've drilled, this has got to be concentric now when we machine it. It was about 10th thou out, and I've left a little bit on here and a little bit on here. Oh, well, there's a fair bit on here. So we're going to machine all this down, get it right, turn it round, machine the other end to size, and hopefully we should have an arbor that's concentric to the hole all the way through, or a hole that's concentric to the arbor, I guess. So fair bit of work now. That's down to about 25mm, something like that. I think we probably need to take another 5mm or so off this end here, and then we need to take this down and finish at the 7/8. Because this is a little bit out of balance, I can't run it as fast as I'd like to get the finish, so I'm going to fix this. The centre and everything's running a bit hot, so I'm going to give it a break now. But come morning, hopefully we'll have this somewhere near down to size. That's the method and the reason I've done it this way. Hopefully everything runs nice and true on the machine. So it's about 4 days later. No, it's not. It's the next day. And I've got this down somewhere near where it needs to be. The hot weather's returned and machine's overheating, so I'm stopping pretty regularly for breaks. But this is a pretty good fit in here. It wants to be a fraction longer on this one, and this needs to be turned down so that this fits on here like this. So that's the next operation. It's taken a while to do this, so I'm not going to show you all the machining because, to be honest, you'll fall asleep. But we're getting there. It's a matter of making this the right length, machining this down, measuring the gear and just finding out what this diameter is and machining this down for 24mm and then machining the end of it down to 18mm for a thread. So this was a beautiful finish, right up to about 1.5 thou to go, and then of course the cut was too fine to bury the tip of the insert, so we stuffed up the finish, but it's not too bad. We'll live with it. Let's get on now, set the machine up and machine this down to fit, and machine the step. Then the last operation is to turn this round and machine this threaded portion, or machine the blank for the spindle thread to match or to size, because there was a bit of wobble. There was about 10th thou wobble, if we remember. So let's get that all concentric. So there we are down to size. I've just cleaned this up, and I've cleaned this up to 25 millimeters to match the spindle thread. This is not too shabby. This one's all right, and this one's, the thread is 18 millimeters on the end. So that's the outside finished, except for an oil groove through here, a keyway in here, and the 2 threads. The inside still needs a 12.5 millimeter reamer through it, but I'm going to do that at some later date when I've got a reamer. So this needs an oil groove through it. There's a few ways to do that. You could set it up in the mill on a V-block with a stop on this side and run a slitting saw along it. That's probably the nicest. We could set it up, lock this and machine it, but we're going to get a square corner in one side. So I think I'm going to set this up in the milling machine and do that. And at the same time, while we've got it on centre, I'm going to put a keyway in here. So that's the next job. Let's take it out anyway and have a bit of a look at it on the bench. So there we go. It's in here. This is what it looks like. This is where the spindle thread goes. It's 25 by 2.5. And then we can screw, hopefully we can screw this chuck on here. Hopefully it's solid enough and it's all going to clear, all that sort of stuff. It looks like it probably will. So that's one option. I've machined this the right taper, and it's about 12.46 or something all the way through, which is just a fraction too small to fit that. So I've ordered a reamer because I thought I had one and I don't, to run through there so that this goes on here and fits as such with a short drawbar is the idea. This needs a key in it next to the gear. The gear goes on here like this. It's a pretty nice fit. And we've got the makings of a dividing head. This arm, of course, or an arm that's similar to this, I think it's going to be quite a lot different actually now I look at it. Will go on here. And there'll be 24 holes around here eventually, with another arm and index pin. So we've got basic indexing. There'll be a rocker lever on here with an arm through it. And this gear will go on one side and the plates will go out this side. So it should be quite a nice neat little unit. Next job though, while we're at it, is to put a keyway in here. Let's set this up on the mill and have a bit of a look at that. We've got this set up on a V-block on the milling machine. It's nice and square, I hope. And we've found a cutter that looks like it's going to do the job. It's probably a fraction wide for the size of the diameter of the hole, but it's not going to be too shabby. First thing is to touch off on this side. Sorry about the camera angle. I'm really struggling to set up the camera on this mill. I've got no idea. I think a rail across above the mill might be the answer again, but I'm still learning. And that's probably touching pretty nice there. If we zero our front knob there to 100, we can wind that out of the way. should give us our 0 position. On this side nicely. We need to move this across half the diameter of this, which I think from memory is 18.4 millimeters. And our cutter width is 3/16, which is 4.75, 4.76 if we want to be exact. We probably do. It's 2.38 millimeters. Find some scrap paper, and 5.76, 2.38 is halfway. This is 18.4. There's 9.2. So to get this, the side of this cutter in the centre, it needs to move across 9.2 millimeters, which is 362 thousandths of an inch. And that brings the side here, the side of the cutter, into the centre of the shaft. We need to go a bit further than that though to bring the middle of the cutter into the middle of the shaft. And that's another 93 thou, which is half of 3/16 is 3/32, so another 93 thou. And that should give us the centre line nicely. With cross fingers and a good downwind. Can lock that table. And because we're putting a slot in here with a horizontal milling machine, the end of the slot's going to continue into the machine portion of the shaft. So that's not going to worry anything, because once it's put together, no one's ever going to know. And it's not really going to compromise anything. But to keep a square all the way down to this shoulder, we need to set this up so that the centre of the radius of the cutter is right on this shoulder. By eye is probably plenty good enough for that. We're going to call that good. We'll set a stop here so that we don't overshoot that mark. And we're going to start cutting, and we're going to cut this part away until we just touching this part that we want to machine, and then from there we'll set up an indicator and we'll go down the depth we want, which is probably going to be not a lot, 1/16 of an inch maybe. So let's start. Probably could take a much more serious cut in this, but I'm not sure about my setup yet. So we're going to live with this. Slow and steady tends to win the race. And that's just touching there, so we're going to take that through at the final cut there. A little bit of cutting oil. You can hear that cutting quite a lot heavier there. That's taken quite a cut off there for that little cutter. And we're through to basically touching off on the diameter that we need. So we've got a mag base set up here, sort of. There's not really the answer. The answer would be to set an indicator up here on this T-slot in the back here where my finger is, and have it operate on the knee down here, out of the way and comfortable, so that you can just read it straight off. And that's something that will happen with an indicator at some point. It's on the project list. There's a million things on this mill that still need a little bit of attention, and that's one of them. Anyway, we've got an indicator set on 0, and we'll just wind it up. That's 30 thousandths of an inch there. I'm going to take this mag base off and set it up again when we take the next cut, but we're going to call that 30. And there's really nowhere to mount this so that you can actually see what's happening. About here somewhere would be wonderful, but at this point it's not going to happen. So we've got the general idea. I'm going to cut this and have a bit of a look when we're done. So here we are back on the bench. Have a look. There's our keyway, which continues back down here onto this surface. I don't think that's going to worry it. Once upon a time that was the approved method of doing this. But we've got a nice square keyway all the way through there, so we can make a key. And we need to cut a keyway with the shaper to fit this. This will be the next job on this, is to make a key to fit it and a keyway in the gear. And that's what we're looking at. It looks pretty good. It needs a thread on here, and it needs a thread on here. I guess another thing that it probably needs is a drawbar with a thread on it and a nut at the back as well. But I'm not sure that's going to happen just now. So next job is to put this gear on, get this sent away to get some threads on it. Really appreciative of friends who do this. It's a catch-22 situation. Can't make this until I've got a thread cutting attachment, and I can't make a thread cutting attachment until I've got this. So at this point we're going to get some threads on here and a little nut made just with a pin spanner. And we can put it together. I've made this just a fraction tight, so it's a crimp fit. But if we put a lock nut on there, a keyway and 2 lock nuts, we should be able to set this so that it's a nice rolling fit. I don't think I'm going to put an oil groove in there at this point. It might happen later. Have a think about that and how to set it up. It might just come to me one night how I can set this up easily in the mill to do it. But there's never ever enough hold down accessories for the milling machine. Anyway, I'm going to call this a day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that stuff. Be kind to each other. And more of this very, very soon.